Hi, everybody. We have Mike from the Fish Tank Barn and James from Fish Room Fever, and they are going to talk about the secrets to keeping a successful fish tank.
Absolutely. Apologize for coming on a couple minutes late, but hopefully that helps you with the first secret, if you will, and that's going to be patience. I think that we can pretty much all agree in this hobby that finding the ability to have patience while maintaining an aquarium, or you'll probably hear me reference a lot the hobby versus the singular aquarium, even though that's what this is titled, uh, will really help you out in terms of being a successful fish keeper and being able to get into a lot of different aspects of the hobby as you grow and find different passions within fish keeping.
Yeah, definitely patience is a key for sure. One thing I have too is really understanding that this is an ecosystem that you're creating. I mean, once you create the ecosystem, it sort of works and really plays on itself and really just makes your tank successful. And you really don't have to do a lot of intervention on yourself or with yourself, basically. So you just kind of let the tank run, let it cycle, get that standard, that seasoned tank going. And then that really sets you up for success, I think.
Absolutely. While you're doing that, I mean, that is a fantastic time while your tank is up and running and getting seasoned, getting cycled, to be researching fish. Again, having that patience. Go up to your local fish store if you've got one. I know some people don't. And go online where you potentially intend on ordering some fish and just browse what's available. Learn kind of what you like, learn what the requirements are for those things you like, and then go from there. Too often we have people just go in, they see a fish, they buy a fish, they know nothing about it, and that's an easy way to set yourself up for failure versus success.
Absolutely. And going on that too, really, um, it's kind of just understanding your own how you operate. Like if you need a lot of automation because you're not someone who's like on top of it all the time, or if you're someone who's very maybe OCD, like really understanding how you interact with things, I think is really important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of cheating for this because I have a talk that's the seven habits of highly successful fish keepers. So I'm using those points in this, but that's definitely one of the things that I talk about is developing a routine, and that just comes with fish keeping. It comes with time. You can try and plan things out, but I find that planning isn't necessarily routine. You will find what works well for you, like Mike mentioned, based upon your system, based upon your personality. While you are topping off the tank, as I call it, the time acquiring new knowledge, you're learning, you're being patient, you're finding your routine. One of the things that I definitely recommend that you do is find some community. That could be a local fish club if you've got one. Again, I know a lot of people don't. It could be going into forums. It could be going into the live stream chats. That's where I see a lot of people end up. Or it could even just be going into the comment section of some of your favorite YouTubers or whatever platform you're going on, to find some people that you can communicate with, that you can share ideas with and ask questions. It's fairly frequently that I sent Mike a message the other day, Fish Tank Barn. I was like, hey, have you kept this fish? Any advice? There's not, and it's a rare fish. So even in doing research, it's like, well, maybe 5 people in the country have this. So there's not much information. Have you had it? And he's like, well, this one is similar. And so I'm like, cool, I can go research that fish. I didn't know that.
Right. It's like, one thing I was thinking about when this topic came up was, really getting a mentor, like finding that person, like not only just going to the club, but finding someone to either A, look up to, or to B, to help guide you.
Yeah.
And I had that when I started doing saltwater stuff. And that really, I think, really helped me in my hobby. Because it's either someone like who's been there, who's experienced things, who's had things go wrong, especially when you're starting out, that you can kind of lean on to get information, get advice, maybe even go a little bit deeper with, form a friendship with some people, and then maybe also have someone to look up to, have someone that's kind of aspirational for you that, hey, I want to keep fish like this, or I want to, for example, when I was doing saltwater fish breeding, I really looked up to someone named Matt Pedersen who, bred the lightning maroon clownfish, bred a bunch of different species, had some species first. Like, find someone to aspire to.
No, you're 100% correct. I think it's great while building your community around you to have those mentors and then have some peers as well. And then as you grow in the hobby, also have some people that you can help out. Don't necessarily never interject your opinion into a conversation where it wasn't asked for. I don't want to put it that way, but be available to help people as you grow in the hobby. So as you learn more things, you can take on some mentees and be able to help other peers and things like that.
Absolutely. I think that's important. You have to, it's kind of a give and take, right? You give and you give back, get involved with your local clubs. I mean, like James said earlier, that's definitely something that would really help you in terms of, being successful in this hobby. It can be challenging at times.
Absolutely. Another thing that I have found with pretty much any successful fish keeper that I've known that's been in the hobby for a substantial amount of time and has been doing this for years is that we all kind of find our passion. There's such a broad spectrum to fish keeping, but we have, people that are specifically, they're interested in live bears, they're interested in cichlids, they're interested in aquascaping, they're interested in breeding fish. There are so many different facets that once you start having some successes as a beginner fish keeper, and you start trying different things and really learning, like Mike mentioned, yourself and how you like to hobby, so to speak. I encourage people to kind of try different things that you haven't before, because you may try something that you didn't think that you were going to really enjoy, and then you go, I really, really like to breed plecos, or I really, really like to breed live bears, or I'm actually really good at, or at least really enjoy aquascaping. So try different things and find your passion. The people that I've seen that are the most successful in this hobby and have stayed around the longest are the people that found that specific passion to key in on, and that's what they go all out with.
And I really do think you need to be almost a lifelong learner as well.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Definitely, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to experiment, but really be a lifelong learner. And I think going along with that passion, understand that passion may change as you go through this hobby. I'll use myself as an example. I was into saltwater fish breeding for quite a long time. I kind of grew tired of it for various reasons and kind of went over to the freshwater side, and now keep a lot of rare live bears. So it's a different, so you just definitely understand that passion can change as you grow and as you, I'm not going to say mature, but maybe as you just kind of travel through your journey in this hobby.
100%. It is very common for people to have multiple passions throughout their journey, and to find different things at different points in life that they really enjoy. So don't be afraid if you've been looking at your tanks or whatever you've got set up. You're like, I really don't get the same pleasure out of that. Don't be afraid to switch things up. Find a good home for whatever you've got to go to, and start on a new project. Try something else. That's a great way to help keep some people in the hobby that otherwise might just get sick of it and give up. So don't be afraid to switch things up. Another thing you kind of key to is we all make mistakes. I was very tempted to start this out with, so you're watching this because you don't want to kill any fish, you want to have the perfect aquarium. The answer is don't set up an aquarium. We all make mistakes. If you haven't killed a fish yet, you just haven't been in the hobby long enough. But really focusing and learning from those mistakes is the biggest and most important thing, I think.
Right, and I've heard people say who are experts in this hobby is basically, I'm an expert because I've killed more fish than you have.
Yes, exactly.
And so it's definitely something is going to happen. It's unfortunate. It's it's upsetting, but at the same time, it's something you need to take and really going back to being a lifelong learner. You really need to have that learning experience and really just learn from it, and make adjustments to your system, make adjustments to how you do things, to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. Another thing that I find is, at least for people I have observed and myself, and a lot of friends, is being hands-on. I find that the more hands-on you are as an aquarist, as a hobbyist, as a fish keeper, the more successful you tend to be, because you tend to get in tune with what's going on with your tanks. You start to be able to dial things in better. You get a sense of when things are starting to go bad versus coming after the fact and going, well, this went really wrong. How do I fix it now? So spending that time getting hands-on with your fish in the tanks, doing observation, not just sitting by your tank, but actually observing what's going on. How are the fish behaving? You'll find some really interesting behaviors out of different fish. And it's fun, but it also makes you a better fish keeper.
Right, just watching them interact, that's the thing, is like I'm a big fan of automation, but I'm also a big fan of understanding where it can go wrong.
Right.
And so I do like automatic water change, but still you need to spend that time with your aquariums, watching them, interacting with them, maybe moving plants around or doing whatever maintenance that you plan to do with it. And that really does help, help you be a successful fish keeper.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things where I've oftentimes I'll just be observing a tank, even if I don't necessarily have anything further I need to do in the tank at that moment. I'll just observe it, and that's sometimes when I'm like, I wonder if I could try that. And if it's a subject that I'm not familiar with, then I can sit there and pull it up, and I can look at some examples and kind of spend that time learning while I'm looking at the tank and referencing and going, well, that might work for this tank, or no, that's not going to work for this setup. But if I do it in this other setup that's larger, smaller, whatever the requirements may be, that would be nice. But it helps you get ahead of a lot of problems. There are people that will just look at a tank and go, oh, those are pretty fish. Whereas, if it's one of our tanks, we could look and go, no, that particular fish is not acting right. That fish does not do that on a regular basis.
Right. And I think one of the things too, especially if you get into something like breeding,
yes,
actually my ugliest tanks are my best breeding tanks.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something I think a lot of people don't want to admit to the public, but oftentimes you'll see some tanks that you just look and go, that's not a quote unquote pretty tank, but those are some of the absolute best environments for breeding a lot of different fish. You've got a lot of microorganism buildup and a lot of different microflora and fauna in there, and they're just wonderful environments. But you're going to get me off on the breeding talk, and that's a whole nother hour tangent.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things, though. Sure. I think maybe start with a fish too, to be successful. I just came up with this when I'm talking, is find a fish that's easy to breed. I think there's a lot of magic in seeing those first fry.
There is, 100%. And I'm one of those people that even after, and like you, I know I've had thousands and thousands of fry from various things, and it's still, when I see new fry in a tank, I'm like, yes, that's awesome. So it's something that you find something easy. Live bearers are a good one. If you're looking for an egg layer, you could try like a bristlenose pleco. Those are probably the easiest egg layer that I know of. Find something that's generally easy to breed, and it gives you the small victories is what I call it. It's nice to get those little successes in early and kind of get that notch in your belt. And it makes you feel better, and it gives you a little bit more confidence.
A little bit of confidence as you keep going.
Yeah.
I think one thing too, as we haven't mentioned, go find conventions like this. Like go to an Aquashella,
Absolutely.
Go to an ALA, go to an American Cichlid Association, whatever fish you're into. Go to a convention. You probably can find some rare fish there. And you get to meet some of the experts and talk to these things. And I found that most of the experts in both the saltwater and the freshwater side are very open. You come up to them, talk to them, interact with them. And so it's going to these events like this as well, I think it's very nice to go. It's something to learn from these people as well, right? Go sit in the talks and go sit, listen to these people, walk around, meet other hobbyists as well.
100%. I mean, I can't think of anybody here that I'm familiar with that won't talk fish, so don't be afraid to talk to other people when you're at things like this. We all enjoy talking fish. That's why we're here. So if you've got somebody that maybe you're semi-familiar with, or you overhear a conversation, you're like, hey, that person keeps that fish. Don't be afraid to strike up a conversation. I've found that in general, most of us really enjoy talking about fish with each other, and we'll do it for hours, which is why we come to these type of things. But oftentimes we don't just openly engage in those conversations enough to get the ball rolling, so to speak.
Yeah, just don't be afraid, right? Don't be shy. Just go up and talk. Find people at the creator booth and find them walking around, and ask some questions. You'll learn. They'll be very happy to talk to you.
Yeah, 100%. I've got, and this is not my thing, so to speak. I forget who coined this phrase, but and you probably know it. Be the fish. That's one of the things that I definitely encourage.
Eric Bodrock.
Yeah, there you go. I knew you would know exactly who it was. And what that means is to think like that fish, to actually, be that fish. How is that fish interacting with its environment, with the other things? What is that fish going through? If you look in there and you see that maybe you didn't realize you had too much flow, which fish can handle a lot of flow. I'm not saying they can't, but you can see that fish is constantly just worn down because you created this small high flow environment. Or maybe that fish is always stressed because it's just constantly getting picked on by others. Kind of think about what the surroundings are, and then going back to that research, the time acquiring new knowledge, what type of environment would that fish typically enjoy? Now, you get some variation because there are a lot of things that are captive bred versus everything being wild caught. But I still tend to like to create environments that are similar to what it might experience in nature, or at least somewhere in nature, even if it's not necessarily that specific habitat that a captive bred fish would have come from. Trying to give it, live plants. I'm not going to say an aquascape, but give it decent hiding places, good flow points, some slower points in the tank where it can have some resting, and just really think like, feed the fish. What's the fish doing? What is it enjoying in your tank? What is it not enjoying in your tank? What might do well for it? So,
Yeah, kind of. I was sitting over and thinking. One thing I want to go back to is like really, go to the basic bare bones. Make sure you understand the nitrogen cycle. We didn't talk about that earlier.
Yeah.
But we talked a little bit about ecosystem, but really understand that nitrogen cycle. I think that's going to be the first key win. And then get the smaller fish, get those breathing as well.
Absolutely. Even if you don't go all out in depth with the nitrogen cycle, at least try to get a basic concept of it. But I really think, like you touched on earlier, the having a season tank, set it up and let it cycle and let it start establishing. Words are hard. Establishing some algae and things in the tank. When I first set up a tank, I want to see some algae growing on the glass. That's how I know that tank is starting to get seasoned. It is 100% more important to have a well-balanced ecosystem and to have a tank that is seasoned and established than it is to be constantly trying to cycle a tank. You're going, oh, well, I'm doing this and I'm changing that and I'm adding this, which is another thing.
Yeah, don't chase. That's the one thing too. Because if you read parameters on a fish, it says it needs, 6.2 pH.
Yeah.
And say we're in Chicago right now, and I live pretty close to Chicago. I live in Detroit. Water is very similar. Like, you are not going to get to 6.2 pH. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So don't keep fish and don't chase the water parameters. You get yourself in a lot of trouble when you start messing with pH and stuff like that.
Absolutely. That's one of those things that I feel like personally there are very, very few instances where you really need to change your pH, and usually those are for some advanced breeding scenarios. But the worst thing you can do is constantly trying to chase a number. Now, I can understand if you've got, like say you're out, I guess Pacific Northwest, they've got soft water a lot, and you're using crushed coral to consistently buffer the water up because you want to keep some live bears, some guppies or something. But in terms of like, I've got pH up and I've got pH down, and now it's wrong and I'm going to bounce it the other way. That's one of the worst things you can do. Consistency and quality will go so much further than trying to get a specific number. Like he said, most fish are so adaptive, and I think oftentimes we really don't give them enough credit when it comes to pH, it comes to temperature. As long as you're keeping a nice clean tank, and I don't mean that in appearance because we've already talked about some of the best breeding tanks are dirty tanks. As long as you're keeping a clean tank in terms of parameters, that is one of the best things you can do.
Right, and then don't change anything quickly, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about being patient. Like, don't go changing things really quickly. If you want to change something, do it slowly.
Also, not multiple things. When you're changing things, change one thing at a time. That way, if you do have something go wrong, you know exactly what caused it versus, well, I changed these 3 things and I don't know which one of them actually caused this problem.
And then if you change something, I'm going to go back to my days of being in saltwater. Make sure you can test for it.
Right.
There's a saltwater saying, don't put anything in your tank that you can't test for.
Yeah.
And very similar with freshwater. If you're starting to, add things to your tank additives, make sure you can test to see what effect it's having on your system.
And I definitely recommend everybody have some sort of testing method at home, whether it be the test strips, a master test kit, whatever you want to have. I'm a huge fan of test strips. But you definitely need to be able to check those parameters. I know a lot of us, myself included, don't test very often because we've been in the hobby so long. We just kind of know our tanks, and we can look at a tank and tell if something starts to go wrong. But if I do find a problem, the first thing I will do is pull out the test strips and test that water. And then I'll also test, like when I'm breeding, I want to know what the specifications were when that fish bred. So that's another good time to have a test strip, dunk it in, and know about it.
Going on to that too, take notes too. Like if you have a system for taking notes, so you can document what's going on with your tanks. I use it for managing species, but I have a Google spreadsheet that I have on my phone that I have all the fish species I have in the fish bar.
Yeah.
So that I have it at a moment's notice if I need it. So find ways to, manage your fish tanks where you can have notes, have information, and have ways to so you can go back and look and say, oh, I changed this. Now I understand what I did. This is what the effect would be if I were to go do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And if maybe you're not quite so business oriented, because I'm horrible with spreadsheets, even though I did management for years, I'm horrible with it. You can always start up like a vlog, upload your little videos on YouTube, and you can have them private so nobody else can see them. And it's your own personal video diary that you can go back and look and go, okay, well, I uploaded this and this is what I did, and have that information like he's talking about. So just find your style for that and find a way to log things and track things, and that'll definitely help.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of things, but really try to keep it as simple as possible. You just keep it, start with the basics. And if you want to go more advanced, spend some time and be patient, like James started out with. Just really make sure that you're patient, you're tracking things, you're keeping it simple. Then as you want to add to it, get more advanced, do that slowly.
100%. Yeah. So how much longer you need us for, buddy? Because we could go all day.
Let's go another 5 minutes. We've got a couple of questions.
Go for it.
Sean Chadwick would like to know, what are some easy tricks to growing plants in your fish tank?
I would say, I mean, I'm not much of a plant guy, but I would say, fertilizer. Just use some simple fertilizers if you really want to grow plants quick. If you want to get into CO2, that's not really a beginner discussion, but I know a lot of people do have success with CO2 as well.
Absolutely. And no, I'm 100% with you. And I'll specifically call out Easy Green because that is the particular product. Even though I was using other fertilizers, I didn't really start to have a lot of success until I started using the Easy Green fertilizer. And now it's like, okay, every tank is going to have plants, and it's going to be a more natural environment, which is great for the fish, but it also does wonders for plants. Another thing that I find to be huge with being successful with plants, and this goes for a lot of fish keeping as well, but plants specifically, get some sort of a timer on your light. I don't care what kind of light you have. That's not as important in my opinion as getting a timer on that, so you're getting the same amount of light at the same time every day. That consistency will make all the difference in the world between, do I have a tank?
We have
full of
another
algae?
question. They were wondering, what are some safe rocks to put in your fish tank that you can find out in the wild?
Oh,
Anything that doesn't react with
vinegar?
either with vinegar, or if you want to get really hardcore, muriatic acid.
Yeah.
But you need to be careful with playing with muriatic acid.
Absolutely.
I would recommend vinegar first.
Yep.
But if you really want to be serious about it, I would get some muriatic acid. But like I said, that's your neat gloves. You need to understand how to dispose of it. And that's not something I play with, but you could play with that if you really want to get hardcore with that.
100%.
And don't boil your rocks either.
Yeah, please don't.
Matt from Matt's Aquatics says, hi, James. What do you recommend I do to clean my fish tanks?
So I will tell you, as Matt, and anybody that knows me knows, I don't do a ton of cleaning in my tanks. I don't know if you're talking about just generalized maintenance or not, or how I would do it, but I'll tell you what I do at home. When it comes to cleaning my tanks, I keep the front glass clean. I don't scrape algae off the sides and off the back. I want that there, but I also do a lot of breeding, but I enjoy that environment. So if you look at anything but the front of my tanks, and a lot of times the front of my tanks, if I'm not filming or it's not too thick, you're going to find an algae buildup there. I would recommend, in terms of cleaning for general maintenance, you do have an easy way to transport water out of that tank or tanks and then back into that, because we'll find I'm a lazy guy, and a lot of us are, and even people that aren't lazy, life happens to everyone. So the easier it is for you to maintain your tanks and clean your tanks, the more likely you are to do it when it needs to be done.
Yeah, I set up my fish tanks on an auto water tank system to run themselves. But a lot of times what I'll do is like James said, I just clean the front glass, and I very rarely will ever do anything much other than that. Because a lot of times, like the biofilm and stuff, the bulb on the bottom is actually good for raising fish.
Right.
So I'm not going to siphon all of that out.
Yeah, and when it comes to, I'm sure some people are like, well, what about gravel vacuum? That's where live plants come into play. If you've got a lot of root feeding live plants in there, you really don't want to gravel vac that area. Now, if you've got open spaces that you don't have live plant root structures going to, you could go out. I usually go about 6 inches away from the base of a plant, depending upon what it is, and gravel back that area. But I keep so many live plants, I don't even gravel back anymore because I'm just leaving that nutrient source in the gravel for the plants.
I very rarely do as well. So it's different from what they'll teach you in the textbook. But it goes back to the ecosystem. If you have the ecosystem set up, bacteria and will eat and take care of all of that, or the fish will.
Zen Ginger would like to know from the fish tank barn, when do you get to the point when you have too many tanks?
That's a good question. I think it depends on what you want to take care of and what you want to manage. It's really a personal decision for each person, right? I mean, like I said, I have mine on auto water change, so I could literally set up tanks almost into infinity. But there's a certain point where you want to, where it becomes not fun anymore, right? I think that's where it becomes the point of like, okay, there's too many of these tanks, So it's really where it becomes a burden instead of being fun. That's where I would draw the line.
Yeah. And my tag on to that would be not just for each person, but also that particular time span in your life, because things change so much. So don't ever feel bad if you've got 10 tanks set up and you're at a point in your life now where you can only manage 2. It would be so much better to have you maintain those 2 tanks and keep you in the hobby than you trying to struggle and keep 10 tanks and get frustrated and just quit altogether, because that happens too frequently, I think.
Right, and everyone's hobby is a journey, like we had kind of spoken about earlier, and it's going to ebb and flow. Like I'm kind of in a little bit of sort of a downsizing mode. I mean, I have probably around 90 tanks in the fish barn, and I'm probably going to get rid of a few. I really want to focus back on like my core hobby, for example, and you have to find, what you like in the hobby, right? Experiment, try things, and once you kind of find your passion, kind of, maybe move your fish to that passion with smaller tanks if that's what you feel like you need to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Well, you guys have done a great job. You have 2 minutes. Is there anything you guys would like to close out? Like, where can we find you on YouTube?
I'm the Fish Tank Barn, so it's just the Fish Tank Barn. You can find me. Videos come out every Sunday, about once a week. So that's where you'll find me. And then you can find me also at various conventions and at the Motor City Aquarium Club if you're around Metro Detroit.
Absolutely. And I am Fish Room Fever on any and every platform. I primarily do YouTube. You can come around Thursday nights, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right after the KG Tropicals live stream. They send on over to my channel, and I hang out with that awesome guy over there, Chattanooga Ed, and we talk fish. You get some videos, of course, but we've got a new property we're going to be building some fish rooms out on, so you're going to see a lot more content coming from that in terms of the video aspect.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, too, is I definitely want to thank Aquashella for having us on.
Yeah, 100%. That I guess would be my final statement would be, if you've not already gotten your tickets or you're kind of on the fence, get out here. I mean, it's always an amazing time. It's great sitting up here watching all of these awesome fish people hanging out, talking. There's so many fish conversations going on right now. I can't wait to get out there and be a part of that crowd and do it. I really encourage you to come out. A huge thanks to Aquashella, like Mike said, for having us out here, allowing us to do this, and hopefully we can show a little bit of love back to them.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Everybody, an easy reminder, we're going to be going live all day on the hour. I don't have a list right now of who's next, so stay tuned and find out. Thank you, Fish Tank Barn. Thank you, Fish Room Fever, for the great time and stream.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.